good evening. Welcome, everyone. And I welcome you to the second episode in a series of podcasts towards the forthcoming Israeli parliamentary election. And today, the episode will deal with the current outgoing parliament, Knesset, its political composition, and its coalition and opposition. Later, Professor Eran Vigoda-Gadot from Haifa University will join me in the discussion. But before, I will make an introduction about the political situation during this Knesset and the map of political parties and political blocs. And whereas the previous episode was relatively straightforward because our electoral system is relatively easy, this current episode will be more complex because there are a lot of details. However, I will try to explain all details. We will not leave any detail or any party unmentioned. So be prepared that we'll have a relatively long session today and a lot of details, but this stream will remain on YouTube and you will be always able to come back to it and see if you are interested to understand specific details. So I'm going to talk now about the Knesset number 24, which formed the government number 36. Now, what is first important to know that it's the election which took place in March 2021 was the fourth election within 2 years. So there were two parliamentary elections in 2019, one parliamentary election in 2020. So the election that took place in 2021 was already a fourth election, that which is the sign of political instability or political crisis. There were several major factors that led to that instability, but I will enumerate the major one, which was the unwillingness of major or significant political forces or groups which would have otherwise joined the right-wing coalition. And Netanyahu, in these years, they were unwilling to cooperate with Netanyahu, whereas Netanyahu was able to secure strong enough backing at all those elections in order to prevent the formation of the alternative government. Therefore, the Israeli voters went to ballot boxes again and again, and this is how we come to the Knesset that was elected in 2021. And this was perhaps the most fragmented Israeli parliament that ever emerged, without almost no big parties. Perhaps Likud, Netanyahu's party, is the only party that can qualify as a big party. It has in this Knesset 30 seats, which means only quarter of the entire amount. The entire amount is 120, and the party next to it, Yesh Atid, has only 17 seats. And in the previous episode, I misspoke. I said 18. It's not 18. It's 17 seats, and most of the parties are of medium minor size, and the lot of them. And now I will try to make some order about the composition of the outgoing Knesset, and I drew a diagram which will explain, which helped me to explain this composition in the simplest possible ways. As I believe, I drew my diagram myself, and it differs from other attempts by many others to draw similar diagrams or to locate some parties here and there. And but I believe that my my view, what is on how you should see it, is the correct one. Of course, you're welcome to disagree, and perhaps many people will disagree with. Now, the most important thing to know about the Israeli party map is that its main axis is the attitude of a certain party or certain political group towards the foreign policy and security issues. This is by itself not self-evident, and many people would contest this because Israel is a fragmented society. As sociologists and political scientists say, we have a lot of social cleavages. The tensions between Jews and Arabs, tensions within Jewish and Arab communities, tension between religious and secular people, the tension, social economic tensions, the tensions between new immigrants and Israeli born, and the tension between right and left in terms of foreign policy. And you will often hear, especially from political actors, especially during electoral campaign, that the old major division on the ground of foreign policy became irrelevant. But I believe, and I think many others believe, that this main division or overriding division of Israeli political map still holds. When most voters, not all, but most voters come to vote, the first, consciously or subconsciously, situate themselves on the axis of their attitude of a possible solution to our foreign and security problems, even if they don't say this explicitly. And as a result of this, the coalition opportunities between different parties and blocs are heavily influenced by how they perceived to what stance they perceive to take on matters of foreign policy and security. And here we have two extreme positions. One position, which we can identify as far left, is a position which advocates the most far-reaching concessions towards our Arab neighbors, and sometimes a rejection of the idea of Jewish national state. And on the other extreme, the far right, the position which objects to any concession regarding the territory Israel now holds, but the character of Israel should be as a Jewish national state. But most positions, most attitudes are within this range. Now, it's important, of course, to realize that when I say far right or far left or moderate, these are never judgmental characteristics. This is just my attempt to characterize various parties and political groups on the axis of their attitude to foreign policy and security. So, and here is the diagram, and I will begin not with the description of parties because there are too many of them. We'll arrive to this. But I divided the political map, the party map, into clusters on this axis. And in order to understand what is going on politically, and in terms of the possibilities of governing coalition, we should first see these different parties, groups of clusters. Yeah. So you can see here from the left to the right. On the far left are Arab parties. On the far right are ideological right party. Now, this, of course, within these clusters, there can be parties with different opinions about other subjects. And in a different political system, we would place them at a different place, in a different corner on that axis. For example, one of the Arab parties, which are situated on the far left, is a party called Ram, and it's Islamic party, which is social conservative. And in most cases, we would regard social conservative party as a right-wing party. But because it's an Arab party, which has its own views about Israeli foreign policy and security and its character of the Jewish state, it's situated on this map, on this axis, at the far left. So what are these clusters? On the far left, we have Arab parties. There are two Arab lists that ran for that election, and they received in total 10 parliamentary seats. Now, the amount of the proportion of Arab voters in Israel is more than 20%. but not all Arab voters vote for parties which are identified as Arab or predominantly Arab parties. So these parties, this time, they received 10 seats. Next to it are two parties which I call ideological left. How do I define ideological left? For the purpose of this coalition bargaining, ideological left is represented by Jewish or predominantly Jewish parties who advocate most far-reaching concessions to Arabs or Palestinians in the negotiations on the basis of two-state solution and perhaps division of Jerusalem or other issues like that, not only on pragmatical reasons, but also on principle reasons. So these are parties of ideological left. Previously, the ideological left would be much bigger, bigger in the Israeli parliament, but in recent years it was reduced to relatively small numbers, and so it's 13 members this time. Now, next to it is a group of parties which I call left of center. Not all of these parties would call themselves left of center. They may claim, okay, we are centrist. Or one of these parties is still drawn by some commentators as a right-wing party. However, I mean, when I say left of center, I mean the following characteristics. First of all, we talk here about parties which see themselves as an alternative, a governing alternative to right-wing government in general and to then Prime Minister Netanyahu specifically. So they're parliamentary alternative. They're leading force of the left-wing opposition. Next, they regard, or their voters think, that their natural coalition partners are parties from ideological left, as it in fact happened. And the third characteristic is that although it's expected that these parties, given some circumstances, would implement left or more or less left-wing policies in terms of foreign policy and security, it's not necessarily that they will do so. And it's also possible that they will conduct, in some cases, policy which is perceived as right-wing or hawkish. So that the inclination to conduct left-wing foreign policy is pragmatic. So now, if we look at all these parties, all these clusters about which I talked, if we look at them together, and these are parties which are parties of alternative, parties that wanted to replace Netanyahu and replace right-wing and to form an alternative government. These parties in total got 55 seats. So they fell short of the majority of 61. And then we arrive to the next cluster of two parties. On this diagram, you can't see it, but what I actually wrote there, it's anti-Netanyahu right. There are two parties which can be defined as anti-Netanyahu right. What does it mean, anti-Netanyahu right? Only in terms of my purpose. So to determine the place of that cluster for the purpose of formation of coalition, it means this. The leaders of these parties, they speak against, and they spoke against Netanyahu continuing to be the prime minister. They themselves actually wanted to be the prime minister. However, their voters came mainly from right of center people or right wingers. So these parties committed themselves to different sorts of right-wing political line. But it was perceived that they were open to a coalition, to a broader coalition with center-left or even more, in order to replace Netanyahu as prime minister. And this, despite that, for example, one of these basically both of these parties on some occasions criticized Netanyahu that he is not right-wing enough. But with the purpose of coalition building, they were regarded as possible partners of future mainly left-wing coalition, as in fact happened. Next, right to it, is a group of two parties which represent Orthodox religious Jews in Israel. Previously, they would be situated left to any other right-wing party because traditionally Orthodox religious parties were open to coalition with both right and left, although the inclination was first try to cooperate with the right. During Netanyahu government's stronger ties between Likud, which is a secular party, and these Orthodox religious parties were forged, and leaders of these parties are more committed to the bloc of Netanyahu, to supporting Netanyahu as prime minister. One of the sociological reasons for this, is that the voters of these parties, although they're quite committed voters, nevertheless, some of them integrated more within Israeli society in general, and this means that they adopted a more national ethos. Because previously the Orthodox community was very, very skeptical, even hostile to Zionism. And as these segments of religious Orthodox community became more national, they adopted a more right-wing view of politics. So this is about these religious parties. Then we have Netanyahu right, which is Likud party, the main right-wing party. And to the right of Netanyahu right is what I call ideological right, which is represented by electoral list, which is a coalition of radical settler groups and former followers of Rabbi Meir Kahane. So this ideological right doesn't conceive of itself as being part of any left-wing coalition. So if we look at the group of the classes of right-wing parties, from ideological right to Orthodox religious, we find that they received 52 seats in the Israeli Knesset, which falls short of 61, which means that the fate of the election of the coalition lay within the hand of those two parties, which I defined as anti-Netanyahu right. This yellow column in the middle, and these two parties together got 13 seats in Knesset. Now, in order to explain better the dynamics, the coalitional dynamics that emerge, we should look at what happens within these clusters, because these clusters, most of them consist of several parties, and these parties differ between each other. And let's start again with the far left, which means with the Arab electoral list. And there were two in this Knesset, one which is called Joint List of Arab Parties, and the second which is called Ram. Okay, so Joint List received 6 parliamentary seats, and Ram received 4 parliamentary seats. A very interesting difference emerged among them, because for the first time, one Arab party, Ram, which is party backed by the Islamic Society of the South. Islamic Society of the South in Israel is regarded as more moderate than the Islamic Society of the North. This party said, okay, we will behave in such a way that we will put the solving domestic problems of our community, of those who voted for us, of those communities who support us, above general Arab cause of advocating more far-reaching political concessions, opposing to any war that Israel may conduct with other Arab countries or with Palestinian Authority, that we will behave pragmatically. And its leader, Mahmoud Abbas, even declared once that he recognizes de facto Israel as a Jewish state. the joint list holds a more radical line and is not prepared to recognize Israel as a Jewish state, recognize its Zionist project. Ram rhetorically accepted, in some ways, Israel as a Jewish state, and therefore it says, okay, consider us as a pragmatic partner for governing coalition. And in fact, it was perceived as such partner. Indeed, Ram in the end joined the governing coalition. Okay, now let's go to the next cluster, cluster of ideological left. Here we have again two parties. Meretz with 6 seats and Labour Party with 7 seats. There are basically no significant differences between them at the moment. The interesting thing is that Meretz is perhaps the only secular Jewish party today, or predominantly Jewish party today, which has an ambiguous stance towards Zionism. Other Jewish parties, all of them, they are parties which present themselves as Zionists, which means that they support the idea of Israel as a national state of the Jewish people. Meretz has some ambiguity because many of its activists say we're actually not Zionists. There are some Arab representatives in Meretz who also do not declare themselves as Zionists. Others say no, we are Zionists. But in practical terms, there is not big difference between Meretz and Labour. Labour is indeed the party which once was a governing party, and it was the governing party at the foundation of Israel. Now, let's move a bit further to the right and look at what I defined as left of center. Here, I put 3 parties. Okay. 3 parties. And 2 of them, it's clear why I put them there. It's a party called Kahol Lavan, Blue and White, the party of Benny Gantz, and the party of Yair Lapid, the current prime minister, which is called Yesh Ativ. There is a future. In previous Knessets, these parties run together, but here they run separately. Both of these people, Gantz and Lapid, regard themselves as candidates from prime minister, and Lapid emerges in a stronger position with 17 seats, Blue and White of Gantz with only 8 seats. There are some interesting sociological differences between the people who vote for them, but these are people that are party that present the main alternative to Netanyahu. But I also put this very strange party, which is called Israel Beitenu, that is Israel Our Home, which is headed by Avigdor Lieberman. Lieberman was long regarded as very far-right wing politician, and indeed, during many years, his main issue was anti-Arab rhetoric. Nevertheless, Lieberman changed his rhetoric and his position in the recent years. And his main ticket is anti-religious, anti-clerical rhetoric. And it has 2 different electoral bases. One is part of the immigrants from Soviet Union, mainly elderly ones. Lieberman almost never succeeded to secure the support of most of the immigrants from Soviet Union, but there are some segments of this community which fought for him, regardless of his other political position. But with this base, he would probably not be able to pass the electoral threshold. But there is another group of people who have absolutely no connection to the former Soviet immigrants, but they are they, for example, they liked Lieberman's very, very strong anti-religious stance during the recent campaigns, and they're perhaps not ideologically left-wing. They said, okay, we won't support this person. Why is he in this group? Because in this specific campaign, not early, not in 2019, but in this specific campaign, it was clear that Lieberman will not join any coalition headed by Netanyahu, and will forge ties with other center-left and even left parties. And he even was frank about the possibility of the Arab parties joining the same coalition. So that's a cluster of left parties. Now let's look at the interesting thing that happens at Netanyahu's anti-Netanyahu right. And first, just a second, I opened the next slide. Okay. It will take a few seconds. And I will talk about anti-Netanyahu rights. Yeah. So on anti-Netanyahu right, we have two parties, which are a bit different from each other. One of them is a party headed by Gideon Sa'ar, who is and its supporters. I'm just trying to open this again. Sorry. Okay. So the party called New Hope. It's supported by it's headed by Gideon Sa'ar, and it's supported by voters which are moderately right wing and usually middle class people, and therefore it can be perceived as a centrist party. And Sa'ar was frank about him never joining a coalition under Netanyahu. But more interesting case is the party on the right called Yemina and headed by Naftali Bennett. Because whereas the voters of Sa'ar were okay, they're center right, but they're open to cooperation with moderate left, many of Yemina voters were quite right wing in terms of their policies. And unlike Sa'ar voters, they didn't have necessarily negative opinion about Netanyahu. They supported Bennett more in positive terms of identity. Many of them are moderate religious people residing in middle-class settlements on the West Bank. And these people said, okay, we want our guy, a religious guy, because we're kind of intellectual and spiritual avant-garde of the Israeli society. We want this guy to be the prime minister, so we can identify with him. And that's what Bennett offered to them. But they wanted the continuation of the right-wing policy and supporting, for example, building in the settlements. And that's what Bennett offered them specifically during the election campaign. He said, I don't want Netanyahu as prime minister, but I will never serve under Lapid in the government, because Lapid is left wing and I'm right wing. So this is the story about the anti-Netanyahu right. Now let's move to the Orthodox religious parties. And we have here, again, two parties. One party is called Shas. It represents Orthodox Jews whose descent is from Middle East. And the other party is a coalition of parties that represent Orthodox Jews of European descent, the Ashkenazis. Okay, I'm having some difficulty with moving slides on time. Just it will take time again. Okay, so that's the situation within the religious Orthodox camps. We have this Ashkenazi party Jewishness of Torah, and the Sephardic party, which is called Shas. And in the right to it, we have two classes of only one, because Likud, Netanyahu right, got 30 seats, and the ideological right is one party, which is called, or one electoral list, which is called religious Zionism, it receives 6 seats. Okay, and now I would like to invite Professor Eran Vigoda-Gadot from Haifa University to join me in this in our discussion about the possibilities of this coalition or the next coalition and about the demise. Okay, Professor Vigoda should be with us in a moment. Meanwhile, I will continue the story of what happened after the results were announced. As you can see, no bloc received majority. So the left-wing bloc enjoyed 55 seats, the Netanyahu bloc 52, and the anti-Netanyahu two parties 13 seats in the middle. However, it was clear from the beginning that Netanyahu's bloc is much more cohesive than the anti-Netanyahu left-wing bloc, because it spreads from very, very left-wing parties towards parties which presented themselves as centrist, and therefore it was more difficult to imagine a close cooperation between them. And Netanyahu succeeded to secure the commitment of the Orthodox religious parties and the Zionist religious party, their commitment to support him and to act as one bloc. So they say we don't hold separate negotiations with other parties. We are all represented by Netanyahu. He speaks in our name. So Netanyahu, from the beginning, had the backing of 52 members of Knesset, and therefore he was the first to receive the mandate to form the government, to try to form the government. And Netanyahu's strategy was clear. He first turned to the party of Naftali Bennett, the party called Yemina, which had 7 seats. So why did he turn to it? Because even though this party was not committed to supporting him, nevertheless, it was a right-wing party. It didn't have any other right-wing political alternative. Its voters supported the right-wing policies, so it was easier for him to secure the support, he believed. And once he had that support, this bloc together would get 59 seats. And then there were several possibilities. Perhaps he would convince one of the centrist parties, either party by Saar or by Gantz, to join it. Or he would convince some of the deputies of those parties to leave their factions and to join the government, to governing coalition, to lure them with jobs, for example. Or there was also possibility, and there was talk about this, that he would secure the support of the Arab party Ram, which was open to coalition with Jewish parties. But he failed. But Netanyahu failed to obtain this, to form the government, mainly because he didn't succeed to secure the support of Naftali Bennett. Bennett refused to support Netanyahu unless he's already secured support from other parties, which was impossible. And as we know now, that there was indeed an initial cooperation between Bennett and many other leaders of oppositional parties that Bennett will not join Netanyahu's government. And after Netanyahu failed to form the government, the mandate was given to the head of the next big party, which is Yair Lapid. And usually, previously, the person who gets this mandate of forming a government becomes the prime minister. Because of this new office of alternate prime minister, it turned out that the law, as it was interpreted, allowed the situation in which not the person who got mandate became the first to serve as prime minister, but another person with whom he agreed on rotation. So Lapid became an alternate prime minister, and the first to serve was Naftali Bennett. And they formed coalition with all parties to the left, including anti-Netanyahu right, and to the left of it, excluding 6 seats of the Arab Joint List. And formally, this would make 62 members of Knesset. But there was one person in Yemina, in party of Naftali Bennett, who said, no, we promised to our voters that we will join only the right-wing coalition. This is left-wing coalition, and therefore I refuse to support this government. So from the beginning, this government enjoys the support of only 61 members. And now, Professor Vigoda is with us. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me all?
Yeah, now we can hear you. We can hear you. And
okay, I used my alternative media because the other one didn't show the picture, the video. So I hope now you can hear me. Good evening, Eran.
Yeah, I and we can hear you and see you, and everything looks excellent. And this is just what happens during live streaming. That's absolutely fine. So first, I just want to ask if you have any objections to my description of this party composition or bloc composition that I outlined before we move to the next. Next topic.
Yeah, I listened carefully to this very interesting analysis that you made. I think it's unusual, dividing the political system when the middle pillar is Netanyahu. Actually, these elections are unique in many ways. We are experts. We are here as experts. Shimon Peres once said that there are many experts for what happened in the past, and there are only little number of people who can tell what's going to be in the future. We are not part of them, Ephraim. We don't know what's going to be in the next elections. The next elections are an enigma for the Israeli society. But this will be definitely a unique election in a way that they are about one person. They are actually about one person. All of the other issues, important as they might be, foreign affairs, security affairs, very complicated social issues related with the post-COVID policies and the future development of the state of Israel, equality and diversity in society. Everything is moved aside. These elections are actually about the political existence of Benjamin Netanyahu.
And this was the case during the election of 2021, right, or not?
Yes, it was about that. But I think that this time, this is more. I think we see much more activity about that, and we'll see lots of arguments in favor of Netanyahu and against Netanyahu, and this is something that is actually the war about his political existence. And I think that in that way, your analysis is correct. There are some people who will go with Netanyahu, whatever he say, whatever he decides to do, and there are some people, some leaders of political parties who declared in the past, and I believe that many of them, like Saar, and I think also Bennett, will not go with Netanyahu. Although Bennett is now outside the political system, his impact and influence will be felt all over this campaign. So actually, what we have here.
Yeah,
yes,
I just want to. I'm happy to that. At least we have this basic agreement that that the issue of Netanyahu's prime minister was and is important, and in this Knesset, those people who said we are right wing but we don't go with Netanyahu, they decided the fate of the current Knesset, the outgoing Knesset. So in this sense, I think we agree.
Yes, we agree about that. And I think that the issue is that we have an election where the circumstances are not much different as compared with the other elections. The only thing that happened is that about a year passed, more than a year. But the major issues that are on the table remained as they are. We have some international developments related with the economical situation and the war, of course, in Ukraine, and other global issues. But in terms of the Israeli society, not much has been changed, and the political system is now entering an era or a period where Netanyahu will fight for his political life. Now, what we had until now is the fact that we had lots of instability in terms of the blocks, and this of course the campaign and the election themselves will be about building blocks. The Likud party is a solid party with in all the polls that we have now are around 32 mandates, and they are the dominant party. They remain the dominant party. Actually, in terms of historical view, they are the only dominant party that remains after the Labour Party almost ceased to exist in many ways, or minimized its appearance to single digit in the mandates. So the Likud is the dominant party, and the fact that we have a block of religious parties that you mentioned that will definitely go with them, and there are obviously some extreme right, as you correctly mentioned, that will get stronger in these elections, according to all polls, leaves us in a confusion actually, because there is no guarantee that neither one side or the other will get the magic 61 mandate. And we'll get to we're after 1.5 years, we're at the same point. Some parties that that competed in the other elections and compete these elections as well will decide whether this bloc or the other will take the lead and form a government. And by the way, the fact that Lapid is now prime minister gives him lots of power in terms of the fact that the Israeli law gives him the authority as prime minister as long as a new government is not formed. I don't know if our audience is aware of that, but Lapid will remain prime minister as long as a stable government will not be formed.
Yeah, so, I will explain this point to the viewers or those who are not familiar with the system. In the previous episode, I talked about this office of alternate prime minister. The idea is, okay, the government is supposed to serve 4 years, and there is 2 years prime minister, and there is another guy in waiting who is alternate prime minister, and after 2 years, automatically this person resigned, and the alternate prime minister becomes prime minister. What happened in this Knesset, just because the previous agreement didn't actually take place because the Knesset dissolved early, to prevent the obstacles to the rotation, an amendment was made that doesn't matter when the Knesset dissolves, the other guy automatically becomes the prime minister of the transitional government. But the transitional government exists to serve even the next Knesset until the coalition is formed. And if, for example, there is a continuation of political crisis and no government is formed, this transitional government and its head can serve quite a lot of time, as happened to Netanyahu last 2 years.
Exactly, exactly. And the instability of the past government will most probably remain the instability of the next government, whether it will be from the right bloc or from the more left bloc. The part in your analysis, Efraim, that I had some dispute about is defining some parties as left of the right or right, or left of the center or right of the center. Well, in Israeli political system, define left and define right, like in many other countries, but here it's more evident. Usually, when we define left or right, we use security issues to draw the border between the parties. But nevertheless, there are some parties that are that may be defined as left of center in terms of opposing the existing Likud dominancy, but they are still like for instance, Avigdor Lieberman's party. In their original views, they are more convenient with the right of the center location.
Actually, here I always disagreed even 15 or 20 years ago, because if one carefully looked at the program of this party of Victor Lieberman, there was always talk about the separation between two states, the Israel and the Palestinian state. People didn't notice this, but it was always there. And therefore, I always claimed that Dan Lieberman was in fact a centrist party. And the only thing where he remains a right-wing party is more free market. Like in terms of economic policy, he remains more free market, even in this coalition. But I actually don't consider Lieberman's party, I didn't consider it even 15 years ago as a right-wing party, but I was in the minority.
Yeah, he is very pragmatic, like Saar, who is very pragmatic. Saar's party, New Hope, is actually Likud, second Likud. All those people from the Likud who feel who are not convenient with the leadership of Netanyahu and were brave enough to step out, because today actually the Likud party is far away from what we used to have in the 80s and the 90s. Of the conservative Likud, with Begin, of course, and with Sharon and Shamir. Today, the Likud party is actually Netanyahu's party. This is the accurate name for the Likud, because most of the people there are committed, deeply committed to Netanyahu personally, and much less to the ideological views of the conservative Likud as we used to see in the past decades. But this is a very solid pillar of the voters of the Likud.
This moves me to questions that I wanted to ask you, just that you explain to our voters, or not voters, our viewers. Ken. So when Bennett Lapid formed this government with 61 members, at least Bennett, maybe Lapid less, but Bennett hoped that he would strengthen this coalition, because once he's in the government, he will be able to convince the Orthodox Jewish parties to join the government or support it, or maybe even to split Likud, because there are some people in the faction of Likud who are not happy with Netanyahu, and they even passed the law to make it more easy for these people to split from Likud, that it will need only 4 members of parliament to split from Likud, and it didn't happen.
It didn't happen.
Why did they fail to bring it about?
Yeah, as we declared before, we are experts for the past, for what happened in the past, and I think that the reason is that too many people at the major junctions of the political system didn't feel convenient with that law. Each one from his specific point of view. For instance, I think that the Orthodox religious parties are following their voters. A vast majority of their voters are holding right-wing opinions in terms of security and foreign affairs issues. Also, this is absurd, because the left-wing parties are even more acceptable of principles of social equity, and they are in favor of minimizing and making Israeli society more equal, more open to those weaker chains, weakest parts of the chain in the society. But they are in their original views right wings, and the leaders of the parties could not allow themselves to defect from the major line, and they were not part that will defect and join what they define, many of them define as the left wing leadership that is now led by Yair Lapid. So this is one thing. The other thing is that I think people didn't feel convenient about a personal law, a law that is directed at a person, and everybody, of course, agreed that this law is against Netanyahu. And some of them even declared that they will support this law, but after the Netanyahu era and not now. So I think that the fact that Bennett tried to strengthen the coalition, but didn't succeed to do that, was in fact a result of fear of some people from defecting from the Likud as a dominant party, and of course the Orthodox parties that are for many years now going hand in hand with the Likud, and will eventually maybe the only option that they will join the other bloc will be after Netanyahu's era, where they may reconsider their views and convince their voters that this is the right thing for them. But we are not at this stage now, and I think that the coalition will, whatever form it will take in the next elections, even if it will be a 61 bloc from the right side or a 61 bloc from the left side, will be unstable. It will be subject to defectors from each parties, from a different part of the system. And the Arab, we haven't mentioned that, Ephraim, but this is very important. I think that one thing that will determine the results of the next election is the participation percentage at the Arab society. The Arab voters do not intend to go to the ballot. Do not intend to go to the elections in major numbers. The reasons are many, and as much as the voting percentage will be low at that side, the chances of the rightist bloc will be higher to form a government, and this is a major issue.
And then the question, Bennett and Lapid, they failed to get some more support from right-wing factions, so that Netanyahu kept his bloc intact of 52 members. However, there was a party who remained outside of the coalition. That's the Arab Joint List, and it consists of 6 members. And if it formally joined the coalition, the current coalition, this coalition could continue. Nevertheless, it didn't join the coalition. What were the reasons that Arab Joint List in the end remained with the position?
It's a mystery to me, because I think that the rational decision would be to support the former coalition or the existing coalition as we see it now, even not formally. They could support it in the Knesset in major points, major decisions. They decided not to do so, and I think the major reason here, I think, is one of two: is leadership. I think that the leadership today there is not ready to go hand in hand with existing Zionist parties, of course, from the right wing, and also it appears to be also the same situation with more leftist parties. So it's a question of leadership. And another thing I think is they listen to the voters, and some of their voters who hold more extremist leftist views can't see themselves sitting in a government with Zionist parties when part of it is built up of Bennett and Saar, who are actually considered by the Arab parties as Likud number 2, or even in darker shades. So it's not possible for them, I think, ideologically to do that. And I think it's a mistake. I think it's a mistake on their hand. And I think that Mahmoud Abbas' decision to be more pragmatic was in favor of the interest of many parts of the Arab society. The only problem here is that the results of this pragmatic policy of him to get a budget for those sections of the society did not mature in terms of having results and proving itself as fruitful and constructive reach to the person at the city or town. That would have taken a few more years, but we are unfortunately not in such a situation. But I think that Mahmoud Abbas was ready also to join Netanyahu's coalition, by the way. We need to remind that to the audience. He's very pragmatic, and as long as he moves over the 4 mandates, and we are, by the way, tomorrow we are going to hear a very interesting decision of the Supreme Court about Balad's nomination or Balad's competition at this party, at these elections. So the decision will be important. The Arab, the United Arab Party is going. I think their supporters are not at the peak, and I think that they are going to lose some votes because of their, not decisive policy about the interest of the Arab population in Israel. So this is the weakest part of the story here.
For the benefit of the viewers, I just say that our next episode, the 3rd episode about this election, which will take place on 18th of October, will deal exactly with the parties that run in this election, and then we'll of course also will know what the decision of Supreme Court about who runs and who not. That then we will be able to analyze this decision. Yeah, please continue.
Yes, so actually we are not in a position to predict what is going to happen, but this is going to be the same episode as the other elections. We will have to wait until the final ballot is being calculated, and the question is whether Netanyahu's bloc will get 61 and the alternative bloc will remain as a minority, or the other way around. I think that the fact that we had a very constructive coalition combined of extremes from the society, Arabs sitting with Lieberman and with Bennett, and Meretz sitting with them as well, tells us a very interesting story about Israeli political system, that even parties that fight each other at the parliament, at the Knesset, all days long, can sit together and conduct a very constructive policy, something that we didn't have in the last election. I want to remind the audience that the other Knesset fell because of the failure to pass a budget that Netanyahu refused to pass.
Okay, this is we will because I don't want to enter into politics, but I want to concentrate on the coalition dynamics. And here, my next question would be this: okay, Bennett and Lapid, they failed to split the opposition and to get support of at least some part of the opposition to the government. At the same time, the opposition strategy was actually to make some members of the ruling coalition defect. And the first was this person who, it's written here, right-wing defector. He was a member of the Knesset from Yemina, from Bennett's party. His name is Amichai Shikli. Yes, he didn't support this idea of Bennett joining other left-wing party. He didn't believe it from the beginning, so he didn't support the government. But then there were other defectors in 2022. and but actually the consequential defectors, two of them were from Yamina party, from party of Bennett, and it brought the coalition to 59, so the coalition couldn't function anymore. But during this period, there were also talk about possible defections from left-wing parties. There was a member of parliament from Party Meretz, Deputy Zoabi, and she once threatened to leave the coalition. Later, she again said, "I joined the coalition again." She's an Arab member of a predominant Jewish Meretz party. And there were also problems with some members from Ram party, from Mahmoud Abbas party. So the question is, why did this happen? Why actually did Yamina turn out to be the weakest link of this coalition? And why were some left-wing deputies, especially from the Arab sector, unsatisfied with this coalition?
It's a hard question to answer, but I think that the major answer should be is at the question of the leaders, the leadership of these parties, and the fact that those parties are parties that were. Yamina is a party that was formed not many years ago. It's not a very solid, not a very dominant one. It was split. I want to remind the audience that there was the old Mafdal, that Yamina was actually part of it and changed its name and its branding, but it's not built up anymore on the same structures that the Mafdal was built in the past. And the fact that the connections between the leadership and the people there, and the fact that they had too low commitment of the people to the leadership was one thing. The other thing is the pressures that are being put on those people from the Likud party. And the Likud is very aggressive, to use an understatement, about putting pressure on people. We know from the media how the party is putting pressure. Actually, it was hard for them to live with the fact that they didn't form the existing government, the current government, and they put a lot of pressure on people individually, on Bennett himself, by the way. But then when they understood, they realized that Bennett will stick to his word for a collaboration with Lapid. Then they've turned to other people in his party. And then at Meretz, I think that the fact that the leadership is changing there all the time. We see now also exchanging seats for, I think it's the third or the fourth time in the last 10 years. Many times the leadership is being changed. So the connection and the commitment there to the leaders and to one another is not strong enough. And of course, the fact that one of the defectors was part of the Arab society, there were pressure that were put on her from left wings forces not to join this leftist style, rightist style government that is a kind of alternative to the Likud, but is not an alternative in terms of the Arab society.
I think the problem of at least some in the Arab sector was it's a Zionist government, and as you correctly, I think, noticed that there is a still very, very strong ideological divide. Parts of the Arab society and Arab politicians, they can't bring themselves to accept the legitimacy of Zionist Zionist idea, and therefore it's very difficult for them ideologically to join parties that are Zionists, that represent the Jewish state. Again, the Kahol Lavan party consists of generals, people of the security apparatus. It's the same people who actually fight Arabs, not on the outside of Israel, but they also have very complicated.
But again, if we get back to the beginning of our discussion, Ephraim, these elections, as much as the other, but this one is even more strongly elections about one person. And the pressures were coming from the surrounding of the same person, and the fact that this person is actually struggling in court and is the political system for his political existence is the major issue in these elections as well. And this is why they are so important, because I think the society...
But I think I should kind of introduce a nuance. It was what actually we decided in the beginning that we agree on this point, and I think that it's right for Jewish society within Israel. So the Jewish society within Israel is really most of it torn by the attitude toward Netanyahu as the prime minister. I think it's different in a sense from an Arab society. So Arab society takes more distant looks. Of course, they prefer, most of Arabs and Arab politicians prefer left-wing coalition because it's more accommodating to their demands, but they have less personal animus towards Netanyahu. So for Arab sector, left-wing politicians and others on the left may be angry. Why are you Arabs? Why didn't you help us to preserve this anti-Netanyahu coalition? But the Arab society has different agendas. It's not our agenda. We don't intervene necessarily into this attitude towards one person. I think that's what it
an analysis of the Arab map of voters and the mandates deserve a separate conversation. But I think that there are at least 20-30% the Arab population, maybe 50 to 20%. I don't want to put the exact numbers, that will support Zionist parties that way or another. If you take them out, all the others are struggling the issue, if even to go to vote, because they are so desperate from their leaders, from many of their leaders, that they actually will not go to vote. And those who do go to vote are affected by Hamula's impacts, by some impacts related with the regional location and the regional leadership. So the analysis of the Arab political map is not less complicated than analyzing the Jewish political map. It's very complicated what's going on there, but they have I think they have the button or the card that will decide what is going to be the future of the political system, what will be the division of votes in terms of blocks in the coming elections. And as much as we are looking to see what are the numbers at the blocks, we have to look at the ratio of participation at the Arab population, because this is one of the most, maybe the most important thing in the coming elections.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. It was very enlightening, and we'll continue to follow the events and to comment on them. Thank you, Professor Vigoda-Gadot, for joining me.
Thank you, Ephraim. It was very nice.
Thank you. And I will summarize. I will summarize the last points about the dissolution of the governing the coalition, the outgoing Knesset. Okay, they had this situation of 61 members. It was supposed to be 62, but one defected, Amichai Shikli, and this government was supported by 61 members. Bennett didn't succeed to obtain support of other right-wing or perhaps Arab members of Knesset, but the person who did succeed in bringing more defectors to the right-wing camp was Netanyahu, and most of these defectors were from Yamina. So first it was Shikli, then another member of parliament from Yamina, Idit Silman, announced that she leaves the coalition, which brought the coalition to 60 members. It's already a loss of absolute majority, 60 versus 60. And then in June, another member from Yamina party, Nir Orbach, announced that he was leaving the coalition, which brought about the fact the coalition was already a minority coalition of only 59 seats. The formation, the dissolution of Knesset was almost inevitable, or perhaps the formation of alternative coalition under Netanyahu. This was also a possibility, and for this reason, Bennett and Lapid decided that they will initiate the dissolution of Knesset, will call for new election, and at the moment the Knesset was dissolved, according to the law, Lapid, who was by then the alternate prime minister, became the transitional prime minister of Israel and will remain the traditional prime minister of Israel until the next government is formed. If it's formed as a result of the forthcoming election, he will stay prime minister 1 month or 2 more after the election, but it also may happen that the next Knesset will not result in a coalition. Then Lapid will remain prime minister for many, many months. Thank you for being with us. And our next session will take place on 18th of October. We'll talk about the parties that currently run for the election on the 1st of November. Thank you.